Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. My name is Shannon, and it is a very gloomy Sunday morning. So I'm sitting here with my coffee, and I figured I would just film a quick reading update as to what I've been reading since my last video, which was my wrap up for April and May. And it's only the first weekend in June, but I did manage to read and finish a couple of books. So the first book I managed to finish this past week was Table for Two by Amor Towles. Amor Towles is the author of A Gentleman in Moscow, which is actually one of my favorite books. So I was really excited to pick this up. This is actually a collection of short stories for the first half of the book. And then the second half of the book is a novella, which is kind of like a continuation of Rules of Civility, which is also by Amor Towles. So if you really liked Rules of Civility, you may like the novella that follows Eve, who at the end of Rules of Civility was on a train back home to Illinois or Indiana or something, and then she decides to extend her trip to Los Angeles, and the novella at the end of this book is about what happens to her in LA. I will say the novella is the weakest part of this collection. I don't feel that it was really necessary. It was interesting and I didn't dislike it, but I really would have enjoyed just a full short story collection out of this. The first half of the book is a bunch of short stories all set in New York, and they were just so good. So good. Amor Towles really knows how to make you love these characters, whether they're good people or bad people or just flawed people. So I really recommend this book, at least just for the short stories. And if you are a diehard fan of Rules of Civility, you may like Even Hollywood, which is the novella. But the short stories really were great, and I did enjoy them. Next, I finally finished, after 3 months, Jane Austen's Letters, collected and edited by Deirdre LaFay. This was just an absolute joy to read. I read a letter every morning with my coffee, and I got to know Jane Austen a little better through her letters. And most of the letters are to her sister Cassandra, but there are a few, as we get later on in her life, that are to her nieces and nephews and even to her publishers. But the bulk of the letters are to her sister Cassandra. And all of these letters are just wonderfully written, and they really do give you a slice of life at that time in late 1700s, early 1800s England. And you can just tell how sharp and observant Jane is. Of course, a lot of the letters to Cassandra are really just describing things that are going on in the village or the house, or people that she met and things that they were wearing and funny things that they said or didn't say. And she can be very, very snarky and kind of judgmental, but you can tell that she was really an observer of life, and that really translates into her novels. And of course, some people think, well, she's only talking about dresses and balls and visiting people's houses. Well, that's because these are only the letters that survived. Cassandra, from what I understand, got rid of and or burned most of Jane's correspondence. So what we have here is only what Cassandra let survive. So we don't really know the private things that she said or thought. And she and Cassandra weren't always apart. So she would have probably kept those deep, dark secrets or thoughts away from the letters, and would have probably waited until she was physically present with Cassandra to talk about these things. So, but the letters really are wonderful. And by the time I got to her last letter, which I knew was her last because of the date, I knew that she passed away in 1817. I was like, oh, this is probably her last letter. And sure enough, the final letter in the book is actually Cassandra's letter to Fanny Knight, her niece, letting her know that Jane had passed away, and I cried. It was just, and Cassandra's a beautiful writer as well. Really enjoyed getting to know Jane Austen through these letters. So those letters were part of my morning reading. I would read one letter with my coffee in the morning. So I'm replacing that with Little Women Letters to Laurie. The Alcott Family Correspondence with Alfred Whitman, 1858 to 1891, edited by Liz Adams. So it's another letter collection, this time from another famous female author, Louisa May Alcott. And I think some of the other family members have letters in here as well. So I'm looking forward to picking this up with my coffee every morning. This past week, I also finished 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I read this on a flight for work travel, and it was good. I liked it. It is classified as a romance genre. However, when I think romance, I think rom-com and light-hearted and fluffy. This is not that type of romance. These two people, Ava and Shane, are two very flawed and human people who met when they were in high school, had a very intense relationship in high school, and then didn't speak for 15 years until the present time of this book, where they are now both famous writers and they come across each other, and it rekindles all of the anger and love and everything that happened when they were teenagers. So this book is basically following them in present day as to how they come to terms with who they are now versus who they were when they were younger. And I thought it was very well done. Tia Williams did an excellent job in creating these flawed characters who love each other very deeply, and how they're trying to come to terms with things that happened in their childhood versus present day. It's kind of a dark story. It's not light and fluffy, and there are some triggering things. Do check the trigger warnings. There's talk about teenage drug use and self-harm. My favorite character was Ava's daughter, who was about 13 years old, and she just was probably the only adult in the room. She was very cute and very funny, and just the insightful things that would come out of her mouth were kind of adorable. And I don't know if 13-year-olds actually talk that way. I don't run into many of them, so I'm not exactly sure. But she was a really great character. All in all, I enjoyed the book. And even though it wasn't a light and fluffy rom-com romance, and I look forward to checking out other books that Tia Williams has written. I also finished Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This was a very quick read. I think I read it in like a day and a half. And this is a large print version. I borrowed this from someone I work with. And it was okay. It was all right. It was a quick read. It is a book about rich people problems, which I kind of don't care about. It's told from multiple points of view of 3 female members of the very wealthy Stockton family. You've got Darlie and Georgiana, who were sisters, and then their sister-in-law, Sasha. And Sasha did not grow up rich. She grew up middle class, and most of her entries are about how she's trying to fit into this very wealthy family and how they exclude her, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And the other 2 points of view from the wealthy Stockton daughters, Darlie and Georgiana, they're the sisters, talking about their issues that they have with money and things that happen in their lives. It was fine. Like I said, it was a quick read. I was looking for something light that I didn't have to think about, almost like a palate cleanser after I read 7 Days in June, which was slightly darker. And it did what it was supposed to do. Was it a great story? No. Did I really care about these people? Also no. But it was fine. So those are the items that I finished in the past week or so. As to what I'm going to be picking up in the next week, I'm still reading my Jane Austen books. I'm currently getting through Pride and Prejudice. As you can see, I've got my pencil in there. I'm taking notes. I'm actually a little bit behind in my course. I'm already supposed to be reading Mansfield Park, but because of work travel, I'm like a week behind. So I'm still on Pride and Prejudice. I mean, it's my favorite Jane Austen, so I pretty much know it, but I'm trying to be more thoughtful as I go through it this time. So finishing that up. Nobody's Ever Missing by Catherine Lacey. I picked this up in April and I read a couple of chapters and I really liked it. But then I just put it down and I was reading other things and I was doing a lot of work travel. So I'm going to pick this back up and hopefully I enjoy the rest of it. This is about Elira, who takes a one-way flight to New Zealand and does not tell her family. And this is basically about her adventures in New Zealand. And it seems like she's coming to terms with some past childhood, I don't know if it's childhood trauma or adult trauma or something, but something happened when she was younger with her sister, and she's trying to come to terms with that. I'm also still reading Aesop's Fables. I had picked this up to accompany Aesop's Animals, which I reviewed in my last video, and then I just never really got through it. I had this on my night table as my bedtime reads, and I just decided I'm actually going to move this to my coffee reads in the morning with my letters, and that way I'll just read one a day. Doing it at night, just one at night, wasn't really satisfying because I do like to read before I go to bed, so reading a bunch of fables at night wasn't fun, and reading only one just wasn't enough time for reading to help me fall asleep. So I'm going to find another book for my nighttime reading, and I'll move this to my morning reading. And then last, I've picked up Big Swiss by Jen Began. And I read the first few paragraphs, and it seemed really, really funny. And so this is about Greta, who transcribes therapy sessions for a sex coach. And it seems like she becomes obsessed with one of the sex coach's patients. So it seemed really funny. I'm looking forward to finishing this up. So that is all I have for you on my reading update. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.